Nobby. Welcome to my workshop. Getting on with another part of the Ellie Steam Tram build. In the last video, the end of the last video, I drilled the various holes in the tank part of the burner. I didn't mention before I actually drilled any of the holes. I did test drilling those out on a scrap piece of the same brass material, just to make sure I got good, nice clean holes with them, and gave me a means of testing the pipe into the holes. As I drilled them, the pipe wouldn't actually fit through any of the holes, so I think what I've got is a good starting point. I can ease these holes out very, very gently so that the pipe is a reasonable sliding fit, leaving enough room for the solder to flow around as well. But in this video, what I want to do is to do the various bends on this plate to form the shape of the tank itself. Puzzled out the best way of doing this, and I think the plan is going to be to do the bends along the long sides here, so along this line and along this line here. I'm going to do it the same way that I did the test bend on this, by clamping the material into the vice jaws, then easing these parts over with a piece of wood, and then gently tapping them into shape to give me a 90-degree bend on them all. The bench vise I've got is not long enough to put the whole of this material in place, and of course the other problem is that it wouldn't go down into the vise to clear this if it's on the bottom, or if it's on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend these three parts first, so that this clears the bottom part of the moving jaw of the vise, and then move it along and bend that part, and then hopefully I can get it turned around to bend the other shape as well. But let's see how we get on with this. Well, I've got the piece of brass clamped into the vice jaws. The vice faces, the jaw faces rather, on this are aluminium, and they've still got a sort of a reasonable edge to them. Now, the way I did it when I did the test on this was clamped it in very, very tightly. It's the line you can possibly just see here. It's just a fraction, I'll put a torch on that, just a fraction above the top line of the top of the jaw, sort of allowing for a very, very slight curve to the material when it's bent over. Do you see I've got three of the parts here, or the flaps, in position. I have to do this one last because the width of the jaw here on this vise is 4 inches, and is not enough to get all of this in. And the other problem, if you can see, you can't actually see, but below here you see that this part is below the top face of the moving part of the jaw, so that wouldn't fit into it. The vise just isn't deep enough to cater for that. So I'm hoping this is going to work out okay. What I did before was literally by just forcing it over by hand, which I'm going to try and do again, is to get these this one's moving quite nicely, is to move those over as best I can. In fact, these bits are a bit too short, I can't actually move those, so I'm going to have to use a hammer on the back of the block of wood to move those over. Quite a noisy exercise, obviously, but no other way of easily doing this. It's also a bit of brute force and ignorance. They're gradually moving over. I'm just going to check the line. That still seems to be sort of okay. And just move them over this way, and then tap them down using the piece of wood to get them into shape. Obviously, adjustments are going to need to be made. When I did this on the test piece, I did go along the edge here with a lead-faced hammer, which seemed to do a sort of a reasonable job. Also, I'll need to probably, just adjust these a bit by hand once this is all done to get them into shape. And now what I can do is, it looks reasonably good, is to move it over to this side just for this last one. Get that locked in. And do the same again. Not quite in line, one side. And do the same along there. Make sure the vice jaws are nice and tight. That's it. But it is a case of brute force and ignorance to get it bent over. Obviously I'll need to make, I guess, some little adjustments to this to get it into sort of as good a shape as possible. So I may need to sort of tap around parts of this, possibly on my little anvil, to get everything in nice square. So now I can turn over and do the other side, but I'll probably do that one off camera and bring you back. well, that's both sides bent over now. Wasn't going to show you the other side, but I decided, well, why not? During the bending of the first side, you probably heard a couple of crashes. One was a lead hammer falling off the bench, and something else fell off the bench. My general rule in the workshop is that I wear protective shoes with steel toe caps on, so that if I do drop anything on my foot, it's not going to break my toes. The other, if you heard like a terrible clattering sound, that unfortunately was a drill index that fell on the floor and all the drills fell out. And between doing this one and that one, I spent about 20 minutes putting all the drills back in. Unfortunately, with drill indexes, with very small drills below a certain size, the drills obviously can't be marked with what the size actually is. So I had to go through each drill with a digital caliper to work out what the sizes were. So my fault for not leaving that on the edge of the bench to bounce off. But anyway, that part's done now. So I'm off camera. I'm going to go over all of this again to make sure that all the bends are nice and are actually going to work. So I'll bring you back when I start bending these parts over. What I want to do now is to make these bends across here. So I'm going to have to do this in stages. I found a piece of aluminium that's got a nice, on both sides, a nice sharp edge to it. Is to bend this over the piece of aluminium, because it's the only way I could do it. I guess I could cut this down so that it fits exactly in, but I'm going to try and do it in stages and then move the part across here so that I can cover both sides. There is a worry here that there's going to be a bend very close to this hole as well, so I have to see how that works out. When I went around all of these parts, the bits that you'd already seen me bend, I've rebent these side pieces, the sort of short ends of the tank. I've tapped it in a bit more here because I've decided what I want to end up with is to have these tabs on the outside. I looked at some of the drawings in the book and it does look as though that's the way someone has done it, rather than having these on the inside, have them on the outside. But looking at the drawing on how they were soldered, to me it looks as though these were on the outside and the solder was introduced sort of under this under the tab, which I hope's going to work. So anyway, I'll give this a try and see how I get on. I'll try and, if I can, tap the centre part in first if I can, and I will just see how we get on. But what I may have to do is be a little bit more aggressive with it when I tap these over to get that edge as sharp along there as possible, is perhaps to go along it with either a lead hammer or a brass hammer, perhaps using a brass drift as well, to get as crisp a bend as I possibly can. But let's see how this works out. As I bend it, I want to try and get these little tabs here to go on the outside if I can. If I bend that in slightly, that might just introduce these onto the outside. What I'm going to do now is move this block along a bit. that over a bit by hand as well. I see I've managed to get the tabs to go on the outside. So I'll try going along that edge and see if I can get that to fold over nicely. Do is move the block along again to the other side. Well, it has worked reasonably well. Obviously I need to do a bit more work on that, but so that I can get it to go over as well as I can. But that's the idea, which I hope's going to work, is to have these tabs on the outside all the way around. And I've started by doing that in, so I hope I can do this end in the same way, so that it folds over that block again. But I'll do a little bit of work on that off camera and see how well I can get that into position. Obviously I don't want this to be sort of springy, because it may be difficult to get that to solder up if I do that. But it does look as though that's going to meet reasonably well. Just see how I get on. So I'll bring you back on this. Well, I've tried to sort of tap that round as reasonably as I can, but it may be that in the end that all this is going to have to be held together with clamps to enable me to do it. So I'm going to try and put the second bend in. You're not going to be able to see this terribly well, but let's see how we get on putting this this next bend into the material. So move the block along. It's going well, you can see it's going reasonably well, and I'm getting the tabs are coming on the outside. When I've done this one, I think the thing possibly to do is to put in the lid, put a slight bend into that, so that when these sides are soldered, I don't know if you can see that, when these sides are soldered, I've got means of seeing inside and clamping and doing whatever's necessary, and then when all these four joints are soldered up, this can be finally bent right over to get the lid in place. I don't know how this is going to work out, but I hope it will work out okay. Maybe perhaps bending this tab over after I've bent that slightly, so that this is at sort of bent at 90 degrees may be an idea, but I don't know. You just have to see, how well this actually works out. I think as I go along. But anyway, I'm going to carry on with this. Get that block back in there again, and do a bit more tapping over. Yeah, I think this is going to be tackled slightly different, because what I've not realised, of course, this isn't the same width. So if I try and tap that in, one side's going to push that side out. So I've got to find a sort of slightly better means of doing it. I think now I've got the shape, this may be the point where I could actually try using the wooden former to tap this. Although that wooden former is fairly soft material, it's possible that actually may work. But let's give that a try. Well, it's formed its shape reasonably well. I've got most of the folds done, and I've put a slight fold in what will be the lid. Haven't put a fold on here yet. What I discovered was that the short sides here didn't line up perfectly well with the notches here, so I've had to trim a little bit off on each side there just to make it line up, so that the lid will actually fold over. There's a lot of sort of springiness still to the material, so I guess what I need is a much sharper bend down here. So I just have to figure out a way of getting this a much sharper, crisper angle. I tried putting the wooden former block in here. I had to shave that down a bit in size, because it didn't take into account that I was going to put these little parts on the outside. So I've shaved the edges off so that it would fit inside and help me sort of form it slightly better into shape. But obviously I got a reasonably good angle here, and you can possibly see a slight crease at the end there where I try to press these ends in a bit closer than I did these, so that these bits will fold over the outside. I think probably what I need to do is to find a much piece of heavier steel that will go inside here, because the block I've got wouldn't do that. So if I can find something that will fit in here so that I can tap these sides down so that there's not so much springiness, because the amount of springiness there may be too much for the silver solder to cope with. As I say, I'm going to leave that part till very, very last, because it may not need as much of that folded over to reach right over the outside. Maybe I'll have to cut that off and then just do a butt joint along that side, which, being on the top, may not be a real problem. Holding these parts out while it's all silver soldered together, what I'll probably do is put a jacking system inside here to hold those out to the right position while these sides are sort of clamped together for the soldering. But anyway, I'll fiddle around with this a bit longer, and then I can bring you back and show you how far I've got with it. I mean, luckily I don't think I've distorted this hole too much to get the little pipe in there. I mean, I can always, to make sure the hole is okay, I can always run the drill through there again, or just, if you like, sort of ream this out with a round file so that the little the brass tube will fit in there nicely. But anyway, I'll bring you back when I've got a bit further with it. Well, I've played around with this a bit more and I've managed to get these sides a little bit closer. I sort of mounted this into the wooden former. Had to sort of cut a piece out of the former so it would fit past the bend I'd made in the lid, and then tapped along these edges with a copper-faced hammer, which has done quite a good job. It's brought it a bit better to shape without really putting a lot of damage on the material as well. I was a bit worried about this hole being damaged, but I have drilled through that again with the 6mm drill, and it went through without any problems. So I don't think that's going to be a problem, other than it, as I mentioned, probably these holes will need to be opened up very slightly, probably with a round file, until I get a round tapered file, that is, until I get a good fit on the pipe going through there. I will spend a bit more time on this just to see if I can get these to come in even closer, but it may be that now there's if there's less springiness in that might be okay to go ahead and solder with hopefully the solder will be strong enough to hold that in place. What I will need to do is to sort of make sure I can jack these sides out to hold them tightly against the inside of these lips here. When I was sort of tapping around this as well, I did put I've got a smaller machinist jack here, which I adjusted and put inside there, so it may be I could put something like that, perhaps make up something, well, either use this or something similar to it to put inside here while I solder that part of it up. So I need to get the bottom bit soldered before I start trying to form the lid into position, which I hope is going to go okay, but we'll just have to see how we get on. Obviously all the bluing's still on the inside here, which I don't know if that's really going to matter too much. What I could do is just soak this in some methylated spirits that will wash all that off, just to clean the inside. Perhaps I'll do that, you know, but in fact when this is these parts are sold up, this will obviously need to go in some form of pickle to get it all cleaned up. I'm not going to use a strong acid. Probably we'll mix up some concentrate citric acid to clean this up. I haven't got any stronger acids. I think people with pickle baths use I think it dilutes sulfuric acid, which there's no way I'm going to mess with that, but I think the citric acid will be a lot safer to use. But I'll probably do some more work on this off camera now, and bring you back when I've got a bit further forward with it. You know, perhaps if there's anything that I'm doing that looks at all interesting, I can always bring you back and show you those parts as we go along. But that's where I am at the moment. So I mean, it's turned out, providing it will all solder up okay, it's turned out a lot better than I thought it would actually. I was not expecting it to go this well so far. Whether it carries on that way, I don't know. Anyway, it's a good a bit of experimentation to do, and quite an interesting project really, making this. I mean, hopefully the other parts of this will be slightly easier to do, but we'll just see. You shouldn't speak too soon, I suppose, but let's see how we get on. Well, I've taken things a little bit further with the reservoir tank here for the methylated spirits. See, I've set up a hearth out of fire bricks so that I can contain the sort of the heat within here, and with a bit of sort of fiddling around, I've got the basic part of the tank soldered up. Had reasonable success with still a little bit warm actually with the ends. I soldered these joints first on both ends, and I've got a reasonable solder joint there. Then the difficult part was folding the lid part over. I had to make some adjustments to it, particularly this sort of lip edge here of the fold, to solder the joint along here as well. It's not the prettiest bit of soldering work really. This has obviously still got to be pickled again. After I did each end, I pickled it. I've been using citric acid, which is a bit safer than what most people use. So I did one end, and then the other end. What I did in fact was, because these sides were a bit springy, I squeezed them in with a clamp, and then I put bent some wire around the outside to hold them in place, because putting clamps on would act as a bit of a heat sink as well, and take some of the heat away from this. So putting wire around seemed to be, to me, a good idea. I then bent the top over and did the same basically. Clamped it with some wire to hold it in place, and then silver soldered along here. This in fact was the last part I did. So obviously all of this needs pickling now to clean it up a bit. So there's still a couple of things to do to this. One is putting a stud in the centre here. The stud is used to hold this underneath the floor of the engine. This is sort of raised up through a hole in the bottom of the floor, and this little stud will be soldered in here. Once that's in position, it will have a hole drilled through it, so that when this goes up through the floor of the engine, a pin can go through it there and hold this in place underneath the floor. There'll also be a feed in here to fill the tank. I've not actually made that yet, because I haven't got the material to make that part at the moment. Just getting hold of a piece of brass to make a little filler tube to go in here. That will also need to be soldered in place. And then when I've put all the I call it the pipe work together, the little pipe that comes out from here along to the burners themselves, that will need to be soldered in here as well. I'm just going to accept it that the way it is really. It's not a very pretty item. It might look a little bit better once I've pickled it and given it a bit of a scrub up. I don't particularly mind how it looks really. I don't like. This could be, I guess, sanded down and polished up, but I don't really see the point in that. I think it looks nice to have a bit of a patina to it anyway, so I'm not going to do that to it. So there we are. That's really where I am so far. So I think at this point, you see, it's not the prettiest of joints along here. I had to sort of make some adjustments to the little lip that went over there, because squeezing this and getting it all into the shape to solder it distorted it slightly, but I don't think that's well, nothing I can do about that really. I suppose if I was really concerned, I would have a go at making it again, but there's so much to make on this this engine. I'm not going to do that, you know, providing this actually works. I did notice somebody else that's made one of these engines, when they'd completed the whole burner, they did a test run on the burner itself off the engine, so with the pipe and the little burners with the wicks in, that they set that going, you know, just to test it's okay. What I'm going to have to do is, when the tube is in here, I can probably tilt this back on one side and then fill the tank up with water and make sure I don't have any leaks. I have examined it as closely as I possibly can, going along all the joints here to make sure I've got a good seal on all the joints all the way around, which obviously is very, very important. But providing that's okay and it's sealed enough that I'm not going to get a leak of methylated spirits, I think it will be serviceable enough. Anyway, that's I'm going to draw this this video to a close now. So from this, once I've made the little filler, I'll do the soldering job on those two bits together. I'll just do that off camera. I've not really planning to show the silver soldering side, because it's, you know, for me, not having done silver soldering really before, I'd much rather concentrate on doing that rather than trying to film it as well. And for safety reasons, really, you know, working with a gas burner is not something I'm experienced with anyway, so I hope you'll forgive me for not showing that, but what I've tried to do is explain how I've done it, basically. Well, anyway, that's it from me. Again, thank you for joining me in the workshop again. I do appreciate that immensely, and thanks again to all the subscribers to the channel and all the nice comments and advice I'm getting. So it's goodbye from me now, and I'll see you in the next one.